Good afternoon, friends. This is the CSOI and the Value of Words authors afternoon with an author series, and I start by trying to rhyme, from what Vikram Seth had to say about this book. A veritable history of our times, description in words of Varanasi, the city divine, plus, of course, initiatives and policy paradigms. So read this book, says the master of rhyme, Vikram Seth, in his review of the book, Footprints on the Sands of Time. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are privileged to have with us Mr. Rajiva Ratna Shah, the author of a book called Footprints on the Sands. I added in time, just to rhyme it, but it's also drawn from the lovely 4 lines which were there. And Mr. Rajiv Ratna Shah's book, let me first talk about the book, and then I'll talk about Mr. Shah, and then I'll talk about our lead discussant. You see, this book, Footprints on the Sands of Time, was released by none else than the ex-president, the former president, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, and the Union Minister, Dr. Karan Singh. And they mentioned that, there are several autobiographies of civil servants. In fact, in our library, we have a section called A Nation in the Making. We have biographies and autobiographies of civil servants. But what the former president had to say is that, this book transcends the boundaries of the run-of-mill autobiographies of civil servants in as much as it has several well-researched monographs on administrative, managerial, general, historical, and technological aspects of contemporary interests. So this is therefore a book which is also an autobiography, also an exercise in how to write policy notes, also talks about how quickly civil servants adjust from New York to Varanasi, and all the trials and tribulations and triumphs. I always like to use the word triumph, because trials, tribulations, and triumphs on the civil service. In fact, Dr. Karan Singh has mentioned the fact, and of course, I'm sure the author will also mention, the Aadhaar card which has become such a commonplace thing these days. Everybody talks of Aadhaar card. Now, the person who thought of the Aadhaar card in the first place is none else than Mr. Rajiv Ratna Shah, and he'll be talking more about this as he reads on from his book. So let me not take out from his book, because he'll be talking to us about his book. So let me introduce Mr. Shah himself. He is absolutely brilliant person. Did top marks in schools, in Stephens College, Allahabad University, MBA, a professor at Pittsburgh University, and from a very early stage in his professional career, right from being the project officer for the Kumbh Mela to being the secretary to the then Chief Minister, Mr. VP Singh. So let me not dwell on him. Let me feel that as his work will speak for himself as we go along. So it's a great honor for us that you are with us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, even though it's virtual. But as I say, the virtual is the new eternal. So we are very glad that you are with us, sir. And at the moment, I'm glad to tell you, sir, there are 135 participants live, and there are another set of people, officers, who are sitting in the Nehru Auditorium. So we have with us, nobody needs an introduction to Mr. Amitabh Kant, especially this generation of civil servants, because we have many aspirants also are with us at the moment. Mr. Amitabh Kant is from the 1980 batch. He is, of course, also from JNU and also St. Stephen's College and Modern School before that. Is currently the CEO of the NITI, which is the National Institution for Transforming India, one of the most important think tanks for the country today. So this is the organization which actually, thinks for the future. When the Prime Minister was talking about future ready, so how do you make the future ready India? You make the future ready India when you have people like Mr. Amitabh Kant in the planning and the Niti Aayog sitting, conceptualizing and thinking of how to get things done even better than they are now. He's got a number of accomplishments. It'll take me a long time to go through all of them. And I have just been allotted 5 minutes for this task. So let me just say that he has won many awards, many distinctions, and I've had the personal pleasure of interacting with him on several occasions. When I was doing my phase 5, he had come as to lecture to us. And with these few words, may I now request Mr. Rajiv Ratna Shah to read some extracts from his. I'll just share with all of you the program flow. The program flow goes like this, that for the next 10 to 15 minutes, Mr. Shah will read extracts from his book. Then Mr. Amitabh Kant will have an engaged conversation with him for the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for discussion. With these few words, sir, let me welcome you again, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sanjeev. It's an honor to be with you and my good friend Amitabh and all the friends from the academy and wherever. It's indeed a pleasure to talk to you people. You know, I was not one of those who ever thought that he would write autobiography. I always thought that autobiographies come easy to the civil servants. But then I did not think much of the idea. But then I came across the lines of Dostoevsky, who said that what is your life? What kind of life have you lived if you have no story to tell? And that struck me. And I said, I have a lot to tell. I think I must. So I decided to write this, not so much from the point of view of um, just mentioning what all I achieved and all, but also, yes, but also from the point of view of, from the point of view of experience sharing. Um, I think I would like to give a glimpse of what I have written in the book. Even though 15 minutes or 10 minutes would be in, I'll be leaving behind during my career span. Among the two most important process innovations are UID, called the Aadhaar now, and the NEGP, now called eKranti. In a short time in which I have to do the readings, it will not be possible for me to give you details of both, but I'll try to cover the UID path and explain to you how it was conceived and how it finally has taken the shape it has. My first reading is going to be on my experience as city magistrate. That was my first posting. I must have been about 24 years. And there was an occasion when I had to use firing. I had to order firing. And the occasion was provided by something which has relevance with what is happening in the world today. Um, there was a man called Kannuguru who was a radical Hindu, and he abused the prophet. And there was a lot of commotion on that. Um, on the other side came a repartee from one Maulana Abul Wafa Fasi Ghazipuri, and he also abused Indian gods and goddesses. And on that, there was a big congregation, and there was brickbatting and violence, and they had kattas, and I had to open fire. So the story is about that. My experience in Allahabad early in my career gave me the understanding of crowd behavior as distinct from individual behavior. It gave me the appreciation of the fact that people behave less responsibly when they are a part of crowd since they enjoy relative anonymity in crowd. It also initiated me into an understanding of collective hysteria and mob psychosis, which leads to outbursts of violence and how early intervention by administration is critical to resolving potentially explosive situations. From this, I derived my lesson of criticality of zero response time. For dealing with law and order situations, early intervention can avert a flashpoint. Delayed intervention can turn a situation into a festering sore, a veritable volcano ready to erupt without a warning. These lessons proved to be useful to me in my later career. Now, I've had the occasion, the second reading is going to relate to my Aligarh experience. I was sent to Aligarh in a very, very tense situation. In Moradabad, they had been firing by the PSC in the Eidgah. It was a very famous incident in which the SP was lynched and the ADM was also killed. And the entire state became very tense. In that situation, and there had been a major incident in Aligarh where a whole minority pocket had been wiped out. So in that situation, I was sent to Aligarh by air. I would probably be one of the only or very few district magistrates who was airdropped to take over in a crisis situation, which was not just communal riot, but also it was compounded by police revolt. I will not go into the details of how all that happened, but I was able to manage the riotous situation. We brought it under control. And then after that, the challenge was my book will also show that there's a chapter on Aligarh which has two parts. One is the communal riot management, and the other one is communal stress management. I am here giving you a reading from the communal stress management. Communal riot management was a warlike effort in a crisis situation. Communal stress management was like a peace maintenance effort after normalcy had been restored. Having lifted the curfew, the challenge was how to ensure durable peace in the city. Where persistent tension had kept the population on tenterhooks. And at the slightest provocation, there used to be a buggy, or people taking to sudden frenzied rush or headlong flight like a herd of frightened animals. The opportunity to set the situation right came as a godsend soon after the curfew was lifted. After the curfew was lifted. One day, on a false rumor, bhaggi occurred, and people started pulling down shutters and running helter-skelter in a fit of nervousness. We immediately beamed instructions on violence to all sector magistrates and police officers to ensure that police personnel deployed on city streets make a note of the time each shutter was pulled down along with shop number. By the evening, we literally had the timeline of downing shutters and shop numbers of the culprit. Overnight, the CEO of the municipality was instructed to get a red circle painted on the shutters as a visible mark of identification of those who had spread nervousness. Next morning, when shops reopened, the market was agog with speculation about the meaning of red circles. No one was talking about riots and buggies anymore, and the entire discourse had changed track. The shop owners of the marked shops were carrying a sense of guilt within since they had become marked men. Soon notices were served on them by inspectors under Shops and Commercial Establishments Act to be present in District Magistrates Court at 5 p.m. Now, curious to get a first-hand account of what was happening in Aligarh, PM Indira Gandhi sent a non-political confidant and a very renowned civil servant, Sucha Singh Khera, ex-cabinet secretary. He wanted to know how I was going to handle the buggy. He had arrived on the day of the buggy, fortunately. I requested him to wait till the culprits appeared before me at 5 p.m. At the appointed time, SSP joined in, a nervous crowd was ushered in. By this time, Mr. Khera had occupied a seat in a quiet corner. The SSP thundered enough to give the crowd jitters. He told them that they had, by their behavior, created a riot-like situation and made themselves liable to prosecution. And the first five to pull down the shutters could even be proceeded under NSA. There was a pin drop silence and then an outburst of apologies. Those present volunteered to ensure that this will not occur again. And Hindu shopkeepers flanked by Muslims and vice versa gave guarantees of safety to each other in writing. After giving them a stern admonition, taking note of their penitence, I let them off with a warning. Khera had viewed the outcome of the meeting with wide-eyed disbelief. Now, the poison kills poison. If people of Aligarh could understand only the language of
तब जब एक बार मारने गए थे तब तो उसने बोला 1500 में आ जाएंगे। मैंने बोला चल ठीक है। यहाँ से म्यूट है, मैंने म्यूट कर देना, मैंने म्यूट कर दिया बस ठीक है ना।
is there something
can others unmute please? Can others mute please? Yeah, please go on.
Yes, I seem to have lost. Just give me half a minute. Yes, I was saying poison kills poison. If the people of Aligarh could understand only the language of fear, then instead of living in fear of each other, it was better that they lived under the fear of the administration. The strategy embedded in the Latin proverb, which was similia similibus curantur, like things take care of like things, had been applied with instant success. Aligarh has not known a bhaggi ever since. There was always a debate on police encounters, and one has to prepare to create a formulation which will endure both sides. I mean, it will endure the purposes of law and order, and at the same time, it will not.
The
एनकाउंटर्स इस प्रकार किए जाएं जो उनके शौर्य और पराक्रम का परिचायक हों, उनकी कायरता का नहीं. This is it all actually. This will make it clear that you cannot tie hands of a person and go and kill him. That is cowardice. Now, another law and order related matter is the creation of a crime criminal network system that was created by us. Today, technology enables us to view crime perpetration, detection, registration, investigation, prosecution, adjudication, and incarceration as a 7-stage continuum. It is possible to follow and monitor the crime and criminal from the time of perpetration of the crime to the time of its adjudication and resultant conviction. The conceptualization and visualization of the overall architecture of crime criminal tracking network system, or the CCTNS program, was a distillate of my experience in dealing with law and order. And the CCTNS system, as proposed by me, was to have 2 tracks. The crime and punishment tracking system, which will monitor crime, ensuring that every case crime was given a unique ID, and that will stick to the last stage of the 7-stage continuum. Criminal tracking system was to ensure that the wherewithals of biometric data capture equipment was available at every police station, and every criminal accused or convict had an Aadhaar ID. You know, in my life, I have had several postings on Ganga. Allahabad, as city magistrate, and then Kumbh Mela, and so on. There was Now, Unnao was also on Ganga as district magistrate. And now, on Ganga, I have some views to say. Hindus worship Ganga as Mokshadayini, absolving one from one's sins. They believe that the very vision of Ganga leads to salvation. Gange tavadarkanata mukti. Ganga is viewed as molten compassion. The inspiration for Ganga worship comes from Adiguru Shankaracharya's ode to Ganga. Namami Gange Tavapada Pankajam Surasurai Pandita Divya Rupam Muktim Cha Bhuktim Cha Dadati Nityam Bhavanusarena Sadanaranam. The Hindu thought, in Hindu thought, Ganga represents the stream of consciousness. Ganga represents the Brahm or the cosmic soul, and a bath in Ganga symbolizes the urge of Atma or individual soul to merge with the cosmic soul. The dip in Ganga thus symbolizes the attainment of Tadatmya or Samam Bonam or ultimate salvation. Now I am moving on towards IT, which has been another major area which has been my love. And I begin with my love. My amour propre with information technology was sufficient to make me understand the ubiquitous nature of IT applications. It has relevance to all knowledge domains, and wherever applied, it completely alters the way things are done in that field in a manner that it enhances the efficiency, productivity, scalability, credibility, and above all, the profitability of operations in that field. It is thus the hyphen that joins and the buckle that binds various knowledge domains. I have observed earlier that with the arrival of high-performance computing, petaflops processing speeds, and petabyte memory storage, mankind has acquired the ability to venture into the miniature world. I call it the Sukshma Jagat or the microcosm. The knowledge drivers of 21st century were to be in the frontier areas of scientific research pertaining to the world of bits and bytes, that's information technology, the world of genes and chromosomes, that is biotechnology, the world of submolecular particles, that is nanotechnology, and the world of neurons, that is neural networks. The future would lie with countries that develop info, bio, nano, cogno technologies. All these require the power of supercomputing on petascale. I therefore decided to work on expanding India's horizons in the direction of bio, nano, cogno informatics. From UID to Aadhaar, this is the story. Now I'm coming to UID to Aadhaar. There's a full chapter 17 in the book, which gives full details of how it evolved. I'm only giving a brief summary. This is the story of an acorn. Initially, when sown, it refused to germinate, but with tender care and persistent and prolonged nurture, it threw up green shoots, which eventually became a mighty oak. This parable aptly illustrates the story of evolution of the Unique ID program. In late 1980s, the then Prime Minister had lamented that only 17 paise out of every rupee of government spending reaches the rural poor. I was at that time posted as Commissioner Varanasi. The challenge was to design a delivery system which will carry the funds directly to the target beneficiary. It was clear to me that this could not be attained in the current analog-based processes. Further, the only way to achieve direct delivery was to create a digital conduit and a digital payment system to deliver the benefits to the target beneficiary by removing all intermediaries. I started a unique identifier program in Varanasi itself, creating a database of people living below the poverty line, giving them a biometric ID, so that the actual delivery of all benefits flowing from the different departments could be properly logged and monitored. The database for approximately 80 lakh rural population of Varanasi division involved creation of 20 to 15 lakh records at one record per family. Though the data entry was a stupendous task, it was accomplished. Nevertheless, the program got mired due to limitation of contemporary state of available technology, inadequate processing speeds, and unavailability of supercomputing. In 2001, as Secretary Information Technology, I took the opportunity to resurrect the Unique Identifier program. Between 1989 and 2001, technology had made progress by leaps and bounds. Data storage and data processing speeds had undergone total transformation. Moore's law stipulates that processing speeds and memory capacities on microchips and pixel densities on monitors increase in geometric progression, doubling every 18 months. A workshop was organized in Department of IT. The exact challenge of the need for creating a schematic for the proposed unique universal identifier program was delineated by me with IT industry wigwigs.
So we'll have to, another 2 or 3 minutes, sir, because then Mr. Kant will interact with you. And
perfect.
Sorry to sort of
no,
have to moderate.
That's all right. That's all right. We had invited the likes of Infosys, TCS, Wipro, HCL, etc., to name a few in this meeting. Home and Ministry of Home and the Ministry of Finance insisted on registering their reservations. Undated by the spanner in the wheel thrown by MHA and MOF, we decided to proceed with the Universal Identifier Program, reconfiguring it in the light of reservations expressed by them. The program initiated by DIT aimed at providing every resident a unique ID on a common platform. The nomenclature suggested in the meeting was common unique ID. I felt that the suggested nomenclature was anomalous and as an oxymoron, since what is unique cannot be common and what is common cannot be unique. I decided to keep it simple and just called it unique ID. My posting as Member Secretary Planning Commission gave me another opportunity to pursue UID relentlessly, since I could now back up the proposal as an interested party. Planning Commission had been under fire for poor delivery of anti-poverty program. It made sense for Planning Commission to make a pitch for the UID. I persuaded IT Secretary Chandrasekhar to get the subject of UID transferred to Planning Commission. The Commission would then follow up the UID idea and break the interministerial logjam. UID became the cornerstone of Planning Commission's strategy and of improved target delivery. The full concept of UID was delineated by me in Chapter 10 on governance in 10th plan document. UIDAI of India was created. At this stage, I retired, and a reputed IT professional, Nandan Nilekani, was appointed as chairman. UID was rechristened as Aadhaar, which means substratum. The name was aptly chosen since it aimed at putting all government program delivery on terra firma. Today, Aadhaar has 1.23 billion enrolled members, and it has become the world's largest biometric ID system and also the world's most sophisticated ID program. Coupled with PM Modi's insistence on 100% financial inclusion, Jan Dhan, that is J scheme, which has resulted in opening of 41 crore new bank accounts seeded with Aadhaar, that is A, and mobile banking, which is M. The three of them put together, try is called JAM. It has become very efficient vehicle of direct benefit transfer. I think I leave it at this. There is more which I could have gone on with, but I can see there is limitation of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Mr. Kant.
So, Mr. Shah, let me first congratulate you on this fascinating book and for that remarkable career that you've had in the Indian Administrative Service. You've had such a wide and varied experience from managing law and order to doing the Trade Development Authority job in New York, to information technology, to Planning Commission, a whole host of both the law and order and developmental jobs. Mr. Shah, if you were to join the IAS today as a probationer in the LBSNA Academy, which is that one particular job of your career which you'd like to perform all over again?
Very difficult to say. You see, the law and order jobs will in any case be performed by people over and over again in their lives. The IT was my love from the beginning, and that was I introduced word processing in Government of India when I was in Cabinet Secretariat. And there is a very and it has gone on ever since. Then I used it in New York. I was probably in New York. I must have been the first Indian to buy a home computer. Then I connected myself with various databases in New York, in USA. And it went on like that. And in fact, there was a very interesting incident which I can mention now. Prime Minister was Indira Gandhi when I was in Cabinet Secretariat. The first thing that happened was that when I introduced the output of Committee of Secretaries and Cabinet used to be so poor in terms of their looks. They were using cyclostyling paper and cyclostyling, and they were using the normal typewriter. I brought in the network typewriter, and then I brought in the computer in the Cabinet Secretariat. And one day, and what I used to do was, after the cabinet meeting, I would go to the cabinet secretary, and he would say, these are the, I would give him a draft, which is on the basis of approval. He would say, no, in these items, there is this change. And I would then, in 5 minutes, we would bring in the change and we would put it up to him. And he was quite fascinated with the promptness with which this was done. And he, when he met the Prime Minister next time, the Prime Minister said, I'm surprised. I took a decision in the meeting which I could not have visualized that you would be able to anticipate. And I find it in the cabinet minutes, which have reached my desk in 15 minutes of the cabinet. And then she asked, what is the secret? And my cabinet secretary was Krishna Swami Rao Sahib, and he said, Madam, we are using word processing. We are using a word processor. So she looked at Alexander, PC Alexander, who was principal secretary to her, and he said, Alexander, how about buying this machine called word processing? So this was the state of knowledge in right up there in the government about computers and word processing and spreadsheets and keynotes and I mean other advanced applications. So this is how it began. Then by sheer chance, they post me as Secretary Information Technology, and that was at a time when the IT revolution was just about to take place. And during my period as Secretary Information Technology, I remember every year was the growth rate was about 50% annual growth rate of the industry. So I can clearly say that IT has been my amour propre.
So, Mr. Shah, obviously, since IT is such a fascinating field, and thanks to the Aadhaar that you started and initiated, we throw up a lot of data, humongous amount of data now. And this is the era of machine learning. This is the era of artificial intelligence. If you were to look at the future, which you've always done through your career, throughout your career, how do you see the IT sector reconfiguring and reshaping India in the years to come?
No, as I mentioned in my reading, which I presented before you, I see that info, bio, and cogno are going to be the key drivers of technology drivers of 21st century. And by this, I will explain this concept a bit. You know, in 20th century, when information technology was in its infancy, you know, they were dealing with the macro world and the macro phenomenon of nature. Supercomputing came towards the end of the 20th century. And supercomputing has actually completely opened up a new field where you can go into the miniature world, and the miniature world requires stupendous amount of information processing and information storage, maybe more than petabyte and storage and petaflop processing speeds. So that is where IT will carry us, and information technology will provide the substratum for biotechnology, it will be bioinformatics, nanoinformatics, and cognoinformatics. Cogno is neural networks. Now, I would also say that, let me give an example of biotechnology. Biotechnology, the major application of biotechnology would for drug research and drug creation, drug discovery is used to be in vivo and in vitro. And now in silico has been added as a third mode. And in vivo and in vitro experimentation used to take a very long time. In silico experimentation, it will reduce the time taken in creating a new drug. So I would say that that is going to be the thing that IT, the value that IT will add. Similarly, in nanoinformatics, the sensors and all that, and actuators, sensors, etc. So the thing lies, the road ahead lies through IT to these various areas of study in the miniature world. And I have another thing to observe, and that is that the miniature world of I deliberately use the word Sukshma Jagat, because as we go further and further to the miniaturization, you will find that we are coming close to some of those things which science had so far held as impossible to understand, like movement, it is called the telekinetics or telepathy. We will be able to probably understand all those better with the development of these technologies.
Mr. Shah, there are a lot of young officers listening to you here, a lot of young probationers today. And you've had such an amazing career from Uttar Pradesh. You've managed law and order, and many other complex tasks were given to you. What are the 4 or 5 key lessons that you would like to draw out for these young officers so that they are inspired and motivated?
No, I would say that those I would definitely not like to pontificate and create some kind of a value structure for them. They are each one individual has his own individuality, and that is what is the beauty of our service. It gives them a unique, profile, experience profile. Every individual in IAS will develop a unique experience profile, and therefore we cannot give any generalizations which will apply to everyone. But all that I would say is that forthrightness will stand you in good stead, even with the political bosses. Most of there are, of course, some unreasonable ones, but most of the political bosses do not mind, your being forthright with them, and being and not really compromising on your main principles. There will be compromises in life that you will have to concede some of the things which the political master wants. But by and large, on certain issues of principles, you will have to take a stand. I have found that the worst that can happen to people is generally that they are removed from a job. And it was my experience that every time I was unceremoniously removed, and this happened at least three or four times in my career out of 25 jobs, my image shot up in the public eye. And that was because if your stand is right, then you have nothing to fear. So a righteous stand is the best that one can suggest to boys. I'll give you an example. I had worked as Secretary to Chief Minister with VP Singh. And VP Singh was a very talented person. He was a good photographer, musician, he was a good painter, he was a poet. He had many qualities, and if he had not got into politics, probably he would have done better. Which is also said of Hitler, by the way. He was a good artist. But, one morning I was with him and we were doing files from 5 o'clock to about 8 o'clock. It was the routine, morning 5 o'clock. And then he came to office at 9 and I came to my office. And suddenly within an hour, I discovered that he had called a media meeting and he had announced that he had resigned. So I was quite surprised, and I went and I said that if this is what you were going to do, you should not have called me here. But then he said that, I knew that your power of persuasion is such that you would have dissuaded me from this, but I wanted to do this. So that is there. Now, after that, I had very good working equation with him. So after that, what happened was that on 8th August, when he made that fateful announcement of for the backward castes getting reservations, I wrote to him, and there was a chef who came to me. I was not there with him at that time. I sent him a note which said, Asambhavam em mrigasya janmaha, tathapi ramah lulubhe mrigayah, praya samapanna vipatti kale, dhyopi punsam malina bhavanti. That even knowing that Sri Ramchandra, even knowing that it's impossible to have a golden deer, he ran after the deer. What happens is that when Vipatti Kal comes, Buddhi Malin ho jati hai. And I went and this note was seen by him, and the person who took it tells me that when he received my note, he was quite happy. But after he had read it, he had a frown on his face. But it did not, definitely did not alter my relationship with him. Later on, we were just the same. So if you can say such bitter things as the bitter truth, then you will not have anything to fear. It is also true that some of these people were intelligent enough to understand that what is being said is for their good. And all that I was saying, I was not against reservations for anybody, but what I was saying was that the manner in which you have done this is something which you will not succeed in attaining what you want. And that is he wanted to use that for his continuance, in which he couldn't. Eventually, somebody else captured that ground.
So, Mr. Shah, you came in from New York, you went to Varanasi, and you worked there for a long time as commissioner of Varanasi. I mean, that's the fountainhead of Indian civilization, that city. And what are the key transformations that you carried out in Varanasi?
Transformation of Varanasi has been a difficult task, and at least in those days. And it also depends upon what is the configuration. In all configurations, you may not be able to make much effect. But if you have the mandate from the political master, then it becomes easier. And you have to have the confidence of the political master. In this case, I did not. But I worked on it, and some of those things are now taking shape. But I did not get the political go through. I wanted that Varanasi temple, Akashi Vishwanath temple, should be enlarged, and the vista in front of Varanasi should be opened up. And it should be opened up and connected with Ganga. This was the concept I gave. And I talked to the then chief minister, and I said this will involve pulling down some 200 and 250 buildings. And he said, "Bhai, abhi nahi karenge, abhi Ayodhya ka hua hai, abhi isko nahi karna." So that was it. So you may not always be able to achieve what you, but it's curiously, wherever I have failed, I have found somebody else has taken that job later on. And it is now being done. It is now being done after 30 years, but it is now being done. And the concept design of this new vista connecting Ganga with Kashi Vishwanath is already there. I had also mentioned to the chief minister that we need to do something about segregating the mosque completely, so that there is no possibility of a clash in future. He said, just keep yourself out of this. And there it was. So you will, sometimes you will have disappointments. Another major disappointment which I have was when I was administrator Lucknow. And I had done a lot of work to improve Lucknow. And there's a chapter on Lucknow, which those who want to read would find what all the changes were made. But I was unceremoniously thrown out of the job after 2.5 years because elections were coming, and the local MP was not able to stand any further my initiatives. So then the chief minister called me and he said, we are going in for elections. Don't worry, you have to prepare an urban renewal mission for the state. And this will be UP State Urban Renewal Mission Uppsala. So I said, fine. I worked on it. I created the mission, and then the government fell, and there it was. It went like anything. So there will be a disappointment, but that thing came up after 40 years. And I was called by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to create the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. And that was the first time the Urban Affairs Ministry's allocations jumped up from a few hundred rupees to 50,000 crore rupees, few hundred crore rupees to a few thousand crore rupees.
Thank you very much, sir. I think I'll have to, read to you the questions which we've got from the chat box. The first question that a lot of people have asked Mr. Kant is, what is the difference between the Planning Commission and the Niti Aayog? So I think so you can address this question, and then I'll read all the questions which are addressed to Mr. Shah. So 2 to 3 minutes for you to explain this, because a lot of people have asked this question, sir.
So firstly, Planning Commission used to do a lot of financial allocation across ministries for states. That has been done away with. And the Niti Aayog now does a lot of outcome-based monitoring. We've moved away from financial allocation to output and outcome-based analysis. And across ministries, the state governments, we do a lot of actually scheme-wise analysis of which schemes are working in terms of outcomes or not. Plus, we do a lot of innovative work, like driving innovation through the Atal Innovation Mission. Niti Aayog does a lot of indices ranking states. We work in very close partnership with the states. We do the SDG goals. We do a lot of unique things in terms of innovative projects, innovative schemes, and we do a lot of, we are basically the think tank of the government, generating a lot of new ideas, which are then taken forward by the government.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll now read out the questions from Mr. Shah. In fact, some questions have already been asked by Mr. Kant. For instance, Chandrajyoti's question was on the cultural shock when you came from New York to Varanasi. To an extent, you've answered that, but there are 2-3 questions which I think need your immediate attention. So one is Dr. Santosh Kumari. She's a senior fellow at the Dr. Ambedkar International Center, and she says that your book is a fine blend between Indian theology and modern technology. So she wants you to comment on this. So Indian theology and modern technology. The second question, again, so I'll read you all the questions so that in the last 7 minutes, you can wrap these all up. The second is from Lovely Professional University in Jalandhar, from the IT Center, that the name is just IT Center. It says that, would you credit your IT policy or the animal spirits of the IT companies for the IT revolution in the country? That is question number 2, sir. And the question number 3 is addressed to both of you, is that why is it that the general perception is that we are yes men to the political masters? After listening to you, it does not appear so, but why is the public perception like that? So, sir, I'll divide 6 minutes to you, sir, and then 2 minutes to Mr. Amitabh Kant, sir.
Okay. Now, the first thing about theology, the combination of theology with technology, comes probably from the background from which I come. And I have always been interested in my understanding of Hinduism began with Gita. And I have read the Gita, which is in Hindi, it is called Adyopant several times. And I find that to be the base of my knowledge about Hinduism. I have not read Vedas and I have not read technology. I have been able to deal with it at different levels. And I told you that in the Cabinet Secretariat, we took the very first steps in terms of email and getting Government of India equipped with computers and creating an elite group of the CCPA members who would receive emails from the Intelligence Bureau, which through simultaneous delivery and simultaneous dispatch. Earlier, those reports were coming to the CCPA members with a delay of three days or 4 days. So with every job, then after that, I went to New York, and New York was, I got in touch with the various databases on technology, on industry, X market, X data of industry, commerce journal of commerce data, the data of from the there was an institution on technology which provided the data. It was called Dworkowitz's World Bank of International Technology. So I was in touch with them. So technology was an area which was an area of interest, and particularly information technology. So it comes by that, and I don't think there is a question in this observation. It's only an observation. The second one you said was what?
The second one was, sir, about whether it is the government policy or the animal spirits of the IT startups that has made India the IT hub for the world.
It is both. It is definitely the animal spirits of the industry. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But if you were to talk to them, then they would always acknowledge the very positive role that IT ministry played. And IT ministry was the one who provided the connectivity to Texas Instruments to open their first shop in India. And from there began the whole story of, outsourcing, insourcing, and all that. and the
So
Indian
the-
IT industry doing online, real-time business. And then not merely that, we have always had a more like a friendly role, an accommodative role, and not like a role where you have a command and obedience relationship. IT industry acknowledges that.
Okay, there are too many questions coming. One from Mrs. Usha Basin about public broadcast, but I think, sir, the question that had come before this was about why are we perceived as yes men, to which both you and Mr. Kant may like to respond.
Amitabh, you take the floor.
You know, one of the things which very clearly comes across from Mr. Shah's book and his career is that he's been a great agent of change. And I think that's what all service officials and probably young professionals must imbibe from his career. And that is, they must continue to change the status quo. And whatever job is given to them, they must bring about a radical change. Always think big, never think small, think of size and scale. And I think one critical thing which I want to point out is that over the years, actually, India has become a very, very complex nation. It's added a lot of rules, regulation, procedures, paperwork, and that impacts governance and that impacts growth in many ways. And it's very incumbent upon young officers actually to do away with a lot of these to make India just easy and simple, very easy and simple for India to grow. And this, to my mind, is very critical. Secondly, the more rules and regulations that you have, you build up, the more they will be exploited by other people. And therefore, it's very important that we work towards this. And secondly, what comes across very clearly is that officers who want to deliver, who want to make a mark for themselves in this service, and there are huge opportunities for this, should never be yes men. They must speak the truth, and they must speak what is correct, and must give the right advice and inputs to their ministers and to the politicians. And once you do this, you will build up your own credibility over a period of time, and people will start respecting you for your professionalism. And at the beginning of your career, if you start doing it, you'll establish a mark for yourself, and that credibility of yours will carry you through your career. And my belief always has been that what you build up in the first few years of your service will stand you in good stead throughout. Never, never be a yes man. Be a person who's straight, who's direct, who's an agent of change, a person who's willing to change the status quo, and a person who wants to take India on both a high growth trajectory, but also work in a vast range of areas. I mean, the whole world is open to you. We need to improve on our learning outcomes, on our health outcomes, on nutrition. All these are huge areas where every single officer can make a lasting impact for the country.
I would add, I agree with everything that has been said by him. I would agree a couple of things. One of the reasons why we are being perceived as yes men is because a fairly sizable number of amongst us wants to take a shortcut to success. And by yes men, you can improve your chances. Therefore, you have to keep the political master happy. What is not realized is that eventually being a yes man will not carry you very, very far. And generally it does not. Sometimes people are able to succeed with the yes manship. The other point that I wanted to make was that yes men is something which is now people perceive bureaucrats to be yes men because by our training we are supposed to be we cultivate anonymity. we take the back seat. We let the political master take take the public face. Well, that is absolutely all right, and that is how it should be. But there is another reason why we stick to this rule of anonymity, and that is that when you are creating anything new, if you generally what people will do is that they would want to take a copyright on it, and they would in private companies they would write themselves to be associated. In public space, innovations and institutional innovations, process innovations can be, there is nothing like a copyright, and you should not even think about it. If you get identified with any innovation, then be sure that your successor will not own it up. And in public space, all these innovations need a much longer time than your tenure on that job. And since your tenure on the job is limited and the innovation to stabilize is going to take more, you have to be faceless. A faceless bureaucrat is also a faceless bureaucrat, because in order to be effective in what you're doing, you have to be faceless. If you take the ownership too far, then it becomes difficult. So that is.
Thank you very much, sirs. It's been indeed very inspiring. And I think coming from what the Prime Minister had addressed the officer trainees yesterday on the occasion of Sardar Patel's birthday and the Rashtriya Ekta Divas, I think this discussion is a continuation of what the Prime Minister had told us yesterday, that we have to be karma yogis. We have to look beyond our immediate tenure, because all great changes will take and will transit over a period of time. Sir, thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll just read you the questions that have come, especially questions which have come from the young officer trainees, because maybe later I could take your response on the email and share it with them. Sir, there's one question. It says, Mr. Shah taking a leaf from Dostoevsky and sharing one's life. Which is your favorite story? So you'll have to answer me on the email, and then I'll share it on the group, sir. Swayam Prabha Das says that how does bureaucracy respond to lateral entry that allows suitable candidates to join the elite group? Do you think it will lead to transformation? Again, it's a long question. We will not be able to address it right now, but later. Anu Joshi, sir, is the secretary of the House Journal Society. She writes, I feel that for every writer, there is a sort of trade-off between absolute honesty and political correctness. And I feel, sir, that this will be more when the writer is a civil servant. How did you find the right balance between the two? That's the question which Anu Joshi has. Devinder Singh writes for a system.
I would just give me a minute. I would like to just mention in a few words.
Let me read all the. Okay, sir.
All right. Okay.
Let me read all the points, sir, because the system will close in the next 5 minutes. So I need to share all the thoughts with you. Mr. Devinder Singh writes that for a system to flourish, engaging each member meaningfully is crucial. I perceive engage, and he gives the acronym engaging national growth, aggregating ground efforts. And do you feel key civil servants are well equipped to handle Sabka Vikas, Sabka Saath? Then Sir Binod is the Secretary General of the Confederation of NGOs of Rural India. And he asked the question, what is the importance of FPOs which have not, and how do you see the integration of Mindano, it's on Farm Revolution. Dr. Varun Gulati from the Ambedkar Center says that what are the particular challenges that you came across while working on various socioeconomic conditions of vulnerable or marginalized populations? And then Yashni Nagarajan, she's an officer trainee. She says to Mr. Shah, sir, so one key principle of civil service is anonymity. However, we see that a lot of civil servants are on social platforms. And to what extent is this acceptable? So, sir, we will have to close in the next 6 minutes. So maybe 4 minutes to Mr. Shah and 2 minutes to Mr. Kant. And no more questions in the chat box, please. Thank you.
My favorite story, I think my favorite story would be one which I have not even spoken about till yet, and that is my New York experience in brand creation of Brand India. And one of the things that we did, we were able to, through promotions, we created a brand for India in consumer merchandise. And in the consumer merchandise, what I did was we began with with the uppermost, layer of fashions. That was, we went to Bergdorf Goodman. That's a single store, which is which is the American counterpart to Harrods of London. Single store, but it is supposed to be the most avant-garde store. So I made friends with this lady who was the president. We became good friends. And she did, Bergdorf never did a country promotion, but I persuaded her to do a country promotion. And we did a country promotion, and the entire store had Indian merchandise. They worked upon it for 2 years, and they had Indian merchandise on all floors, all show windows. And that is from 15th November to 5th January. Now, that was a period of peak merchandising period. And after that, the success was could be seen when you went to Saks Fifth Avenue or any other major department store. You would find that Indian consumer merchandises, you would find, say, ladies' dresses. They would be those which were earlier showing country of origin as Italy, were now showing a country of origin as India. And they were very expensive ones. They were $3,500 and $5,000 and the like. So it immediately put us in the uppermost bracket of fashions. We worked with fashion top-notchers, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Jeffrey Bean, Diane Spencer, and we created Brand India. I think in brand creation, Amitabh has an even better story, and that is the story of the two brands he has created, which I'm sure he'll like to talk about. So let him take up this thing. Or you want me to continue with others? Honesty. Honesty was an issue which you will find, I think, in ample measure in my book. I have, if you find in Ironly Ministry chapter, I have put 5 cartoons which do not necessarily depict me in a very, very nice light. But they came out at that time, so I thought I would be dishonest if I don't show them up. Also, I find that in 2 places, at least in respect of Media Lab Asia, in the IT chapter, you will find how Media Lab Asia chapter was something which should have taken place. Media Lab, it was MIT Media Lab. We had hammered out a collaboration. It was in the space of bridging the digital divide, which was such an important topic. We had already started creating copyrights and things, patents. And then there was a change of minister, and with the change of minister, I had to give up. The entire experiment was given up. So like this, there will be other stories of failure. I think I'll answer these 2 because of shortage of time.
Sanjeev, do you want me to speak?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you
I
hear
can,
me?
sir.
Huh.
Yes, sir. So what I'm
you hear me?
suggesting, sir, is that you please give your comments, sir, and also thank Mr. Shah, and also close the discussion, sir. We have overshot our time, sir.
Okay. How much time do I have?
Sir, our time ended 10 minutes ago, but we'll continue, sir, for another 5-6 minutes.
Okay.
At 4:20, this system will go off, sir.
No, it's been fascinating listening to Mr. Shah, but let me just tell you that I've spent over 40 years in both the state of Kerala and in Government of India. And let me also tell you that the service is full of challenges, and actually, at one point of time, I ran foul of my government, which was a communist government in Kerala, and I was without a posting for a long time. And then as a punishment posting, I was posted as Secretary Tourism. Nobody had heard of Kerala as a tourism destination then. Everybody used to go to Kashmir or Rajasthan. But I was able to use that opportunity to build Kerala as a tourism destination, and build it as a high value upmarket destination, create completely new products like the backwater, Ayurveda, houseboats, tree huts, and go back to its roots. We went back to its roots of traditional culture, traditional cuisine, did an antithesis of everything that the West stood for, and created a unique brand of God's own country. And then, one fine day, Mr. Brijesh Mishra called me up. He was then the principal secretary to the Prime Minister. And he said, Mr. Vajpayee wants to have a holiday in Kerala. And he said he will not be a state guest and you will be the only person looking after him. So I made arrangements in Kumaragam, the backwaters of Kerala. And I took him around the backwaters, everything. And then, we were sitting one day over dinner, and Mr. Brijesh Mishra tells Mr. Vajpayee that we should get this officer to Delhi in the Ministry of Tourism. So Mr. Vajpayee, the Prime Minister, turns to me and said, Amitabh ji, aapne apply kiya hai Bharat Sarkar ke liye? So I said, no, sir, maine to nahi apply kiya. So he said, aap mat apply kijiyega. Agar apply kijiyega, to Brijesh Mishra ji aapko tourism ke badle women and child welfare mein bhej denge. So I didn't apply. I applied after 1 year, and I was supposed to be going to corporate affairs. And then again, Mr. Brijesh Mishra called me up. He said, have you applied for Delhi? So I said, yes. And there was no post in tourism ministry. They created a post and posted me as joint secretary tourism. Within 10 days of that, the Twin Tower blast in New York happened. There was a war in Afghanistan. There was attack on our parliament, and our tourism came down to 10% hotel occupancy. And at the peak of that crisis, when Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, everybody had stopped their marketing campaign, we launched the Incredible India campaign, and we brought back consumer demand. The point of saying all this is that every crisis and every problem is an opportunity for young officers. And to my mind, we just need to be optimists and always look at the future and try and be a massive agent of change. And that is what Mr. Shah's book brings out very clearly, that you must look constantly at doing things new, constantly be a change agent, and constantly be an optimist. And that, to my mind, is the key lesson from his book, that optimism, being a futuristic, and constantly wanting to bring in radical transformation in the growth process of India is the key to being a successful officer.
Just before
Thank you very
close,
much, sir. On this note,
1 minute.
Sir.
Please send me all the questions by email,
Yes,
and I would like
Yes,
to
sir.
answer them. And
Yes,
the name of the person, and if his
Sir.
email ID is also there, I would like to give the answers.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been indeed a wonderful conversation. I'm sure everybody is putting their hands together to clap for both of you. So we will be sending you the questions which have been addressed to both Mr. Shah and Mr. Khan. This will also be available on our YouTube videos for those who have not seen it. And I'll again like to thank the Civil Services Officer Institute, Delhi, for giving us this opportunity for this wonderful interaction. Thank you very much, sir. I wish we could have gone on and on and on, but then there are limitations to time, but not to our imagination and not to our optimism. Thank you very much, sirs. It's been indeed a pleasure for us to interact with you. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you. Thank you so much.